What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Middays with Q. Coming at you, as always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, and we are part of Broad Street South End. Of course, our very good friends over at Sports Radio 1029 FM, Southwest Florida's newest game in town. You can check us out on YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, powered by our good friends at Play It Again Sports. Jonathan Marshall covers the Celtics, WMUR, on the road, on location, snug as a bug in the hotel room, getting set for game 3 in Dallas tonight. The Celtics lead that best of 7 series 2-0. We'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to Dan Hurley spurning the Lakers and Jonathan's thoughts on that. But you got to start with the passing of the legend, the logo, Mr. Clutch, Jerry West, earlier this morning, 86 years of age. And I guess first reaction to you, I'll let you start it off when you learn of the passing of the great Jerry West.
Yeah, well, shocking, right? You're never expecting to wake up to that type of news. And, I wasn't alive when he was when he was a player, right? But
Right.
being a historian and following the history of the game, learning that he was the logo, and then like, why was he the logo? Seeing his highlights, looking at his stats, lost the finals and still won the MVP. I'm like, oh, I get it now. But then on top of that, as you see what he did as an executive,
Yep.
so many franchises, the vision to build championship teams, the vision to spot talent and guys that some others may not have seen it in. We can mention the Kobe's. We see what he did with the Warriors, like the Clippers, like just the greatest combination of player talent and executive that we've ever had in this game. Maybe in all of sports, pound for pound. He's up
Yeah,
there.
a couple things that stand out, right? You mentioned the only player to win finals MVP. That was on a losing team, 1969. Growing up, I always remembered watching the highlights of those old NBA films and NBA shows where, the Busher hits it into West, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, right? The half court shot,
Yeah.
uh, AKA becoming Mr. Clutch, and then, of course, the logo. Listen, he was an all-star every year of his career. Okay. He led the Lakers to the NBA Finals. Obviously, that team was stacked as well 9 times. 71, 72, they win the title, 25,000 points. If they had the advent of the 3-point shot, he would have easily scored 40,000 points in his career. Easily, easily. But what he was able to do as a floor general, as a leader on the floor, I pulled this up too, 9 times. Think about this. Now, I want you to really pay attention to this because it goes back to our debate last week on Middays with Q when we were talking about Curry being a potentially, some people think, a top 5 player. Jerry West was in the MVP conversation, top 5 MVP voting 9 times in 14 years. That tells you right there he was top 2, 3, 4 player in that generation year, which tells you he's definitely top 5, 6, 7, top 10 as we speak. And then you mentioned what he was able to do as an executive with some of these franchises and these teams. I mean, look, he basically helped build the Showtime Lakers, right? In the 80s, 5 titles. Kobe and Shaq, they had the three-peat. He was a part for one. Then the Clippers. I mean, it is a major loss. I mean, you lose Bill Walton. Now you lose Jerry West. We always say it happens in threes. The impact on the game. I mean, for God's sakes, this man was the logo. When people were like, oh, where's that NBA logo? I mean, when you get Jordan coming out saying, man, I wish I played against him. I wish he was a teammate. When you have all these, old time basketball heads, the new school players that just really did not get a chance to watch him. And like you said, I mean, you and I, we didn't grow up watching him. We had to go through archives and footage. But, Mr. Clutch, that's a guy, anytime you wanted the ball late in a game, right? I mean, that's what you want in a great player. You want them to want the ball late in a game and then to deliver in crunch time in the clutch. And like I said, that half court shot, it's one of the most iconic and I believe historic pieces of NBA footage. You can probably say the top 5, right? I mean, you can go to the 75 Celtics and the Suns with the Hurt, turnaround for another overtime, Jordan over Elo, right? There's so many moments, but that stands there, and that was Jerry West.
He's so universally beloved, Q. It's not often where the all-time greats. Usually there's a section of fans or people who you can critique, poke holes at certain greats, right?
Of
Whether
course.
the game, whether it's the character, off the court, whatever. With Jerry West, I literally have not seen or heard a single bad headline or bad comment from anybody, right? And so you look at his history, his resume, you talk about basketball resumes. I didn't realize he will be inducted 3 times into the Hall of Fame as a player. He was a part of the 1960 U.S. Olympic gold team that made the Hall of Fame. And
That's
also,
right.
he'll be inducted as a contributor or as an executive and consultant, right? And so the logo to me is twofold, not only as a player, but to be able to see the players who have the gift as well. That's not easy. We've seen so many greats who have tried to coach, who have tried to be GMs,
Yep.
to have that combination and be just as good at both. Because what we see from great players is they expect it's so hard to be a coach or a GM because you can't relate to the average player, right? You expect them to just be great and have the gift that you have or the work ethic or the mentality, but you're special. You're one of one. Not everybody's going to have that gene inside, right? And so with Jerry West, he's able to see a Sean Livingston, an SGA. He's able to see the talent that most people may not see and say, this is how we can build, and this is how he can be a part of our championship franchise. This is how an SGA, who most people may overlook in the draft, I see something special. Now, what do we have? An MVP candidate in OKC. So his hands from this, from when he first started playing until 2024,
Yep.
until the next decade, his impact will be felt over the next decade when you see the players that are still playing that he had a hand in.
14, an all-star in all 14 of his NBA seasons, a 12-time all-NBA selection, 25,000 points, 72 championship team, finals MVP on a losing team in 69, selected as part of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, general manager of 8 NBA championship teams with the Lakers, built Showtime Dynasty, wall-to-wall Hall of Famers. Also, we mentioned worked in the front office, Memphis, Golden State, the Clippers, again, drafted Magic Johnson, James Worthy, brought in Kobe Bryant, eventually Shaq to play alongside Kobe Bryant. And then also, too, think about this. Was always at those summer league games in Vegas, trying to catch the glimpse of the Knicks, but also, really went to bat and took some shots and some flyers and some chances on some players that maybe, weren't going to get an opportunity. And he was just drafting, these kids, I think, just because he believed in their character and knew that they had some skill and had some talent. And I think that kind of speaks to what he was able to do, because basketball is universally, right? It's a universal, right? So it doesn't matter, black, white, yellow, green, it does not matter. But I think you have to throw that in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, when you really take in certain guys that may be overlooked in the game. And Jerry West, to me, as I've gotten older and really realized what he did as a player,
Mm-hmm.
he's probably one of the more overlooked greats in basketball.
Yep.
I mean, he literally is the logo, and he's not talked about enough. It's
That's
crazy.
why when people start to say, oh, top 10, and they throw these younger, I'm like, come on, man, know the history of the game, appreciate the history of the game.
Yeah, and like I said before, for the next decade, when he has left this earth, but his impact is still being felt with an SGA, these younger guys that he's been a part of. He's had a hand in Kobe Bryant being being part of that trade from Charlotte originally drafted
right.
Kobe, right? So his impact with the Grizzlies, the Warriors, these are franchises that he helped breathe life into, and set on a positive track. You know what I mean? And so he's done it at multiple stops.
He traded Divac for Kobe Bryant, okay, July 11th, 1996.
Yeah.
Then July 18th, 1996, he signed Shaq as a free agent.
Yeah.
And there you
He
go.
breathed new life into the Lakers franchise.
Yep. Yeah. And by the way, great segue. And again, Jonathan Marshall joining me, Middays with Q. Rich Quinones here, Sports Radio 102.9 FM, Southwest Florida's newest game in town. Also on my YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, Broad Street South. And we are brought to you by Play It Again Sports. Great segue into the Lakers, right? Because I guess all these reports, and now you have the talking heads, the NBA insiders kind of going back and forth at each other. What report is legit, what report wasn't legit. At the end of the day, Danny Hurley is going back to UConn to try to get another title, get that statue, build that legacy. It would be a three-peat if they were to do it again. And he spurns the Lakers. What was it? 6, 7, 5 years, 60, 70 million, whatever the numbers are at the end of the day. I know you and I talked about where the Lakers are at. I think they've got some substantial egg on their face, but I'm starting to wonder, is this really a destination franchise? Now, again, knowing it's the Lakers, Tinseltown, purple and gold,
Right.
Not the 70s, not the 80s, not the 90s, not the early 2000s. You're dealing with a lot of egos. You're dealing with an aging LeBron, who's going to want to be the de facto coach of that team. And maybe it's a smart move by Hurley, even though people will say this is an opportunity of a lifetime, right? Coaching the NBA, because there's a handful of opportunities. NFL 32 teams, take it, take it, take it, bank some money. You can always go back to college. I'm just wondering if he just wants to kind of have that big time legacy now as one of the all time great college basketball coaches, head basketball coaches of all time for a storied franchise in UConn. And if you win it again, and that's back to back to back, you pretty much have cemented your legacy. So, reaction, Spurs to Lakers, and where do Lakers go from here?
Well, first off, I can't blame Hurley either way. I think whatever choice he makes, you can't blame him, right?
No,
If he goes back to UConn, you understand he's built something special there. If you win 3 straight, that's rarefied air, right? Like that's greatest of all time type of conversation. You put yourself in that
oh yeah,
conversation. And to do it at UConn, right? You're not at a North Carolina, a Duke, a Kansas, Kentucky. UConn is obviously throughout the 90s and early
sure,
2000s. Now they've won, right? But you're not a traditional blue blood of the programs
right,
that I
right, right,
mentioned.
right.
But where you built this program now, to me, UConn is the preeminent program in college basketball, right? And so to be able to see that through and see how far you can take it, I can see that vision. And on the other side, turning the Lakers down, honestly, if it's not the right situation for yourself, I respect not being moved by the money, right? Because it has to be deeper than that, especially for him and being a true. I mean, he's a basketball lifer. You know about his dad, his brother. Like this is a basketball family, right? And he's not going to make a move unless basketball wise he really believes in the vision. And
Yep,
with the Lakers, they don't have a vision. They
right.
haven't had one for years now. They won the title in 2020, but outside of that, what has been the vision? What has been the direction? And whatever vision they presented to Hurley, obviously it wasn't good enough. And I respect it because anybody can see that has been an incompetent front office. And once again, Hurley, who is a ball knower, he knows basketball. This decision shows that.
Yeah. So, two schools of thought here. When Harbaugh, we knew he was going to leave Michigan if, say, Dallas opened up. Obviously,
Right.
Chargers franchise he played for throughout his career, and he's got a good quarterback, right? And the money's there. NFL, been there before, can always go back. Hurley, you would say, hey, man, at your peak right now, because you're coming off a back-to-back run at UConn, you're a hot commodity. You can have your pick, right? So hence the Lakers. Here we go. But I also think there's probably a part of him, if you gave him some truth serum, where he's just like, honestly, I don't want to have to look over my shoulder if we're 20 and 20, 40 games in, and LeBron James is complaining
Mhm.
because you know what's going to happen. He's going to get fired midseason, or he's going to last a season and they'll have to pay out the rest of his contract. And again, they're right back where they started from. So I think sometimes we always say the grass is greener, and sometimes it's not always greener. Sometimes the best move. I mean, I always bring this up in the NBA. Years ago, you know this, being a NBA junkie. The Bulls were looking to move Scottie Pippen. The rumor was they were going to trade him Seattle straight up for Sean Kemp. Some of the best moves are the ones you never make, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think in this instance, it's a smart play from Hurley because he knows he has a dynasty in
Yeah.
UConn, and he can turn around if they win it again. Then if he wants to go to the NBA. He can go to the NBA, and maybe he can have a better opportunity, a better fit where you're not looking at an aging team that has some egos and they're trying to just catch lightning in a bottle one more time, because ultimately it's the players, right?
Mhm.
You know this, right? It's a players league. The players got to play. If you don't have the roster, it doesn't matter if
Right.
it's Phil Jackson, right? If it's Red Auerbach, if it's if it's Pat Riley, or if it's Hurley in this instance coaching these guys.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes look, sometimes things just don't feel right. And you're not going to move no matter how much money they're offering you, right? You don't want to compromise what you believe in and the vision you have for yourself. So let's say he takes his job in LA, he gets burned out after a couple of years and he never wants to try the NBA again, right? The
Yeah.
NBA is his dream. You get one shot to get this first opportunity in the
Yep.
league. You want to make it count, right? And so for him, maybe a great situation for him or a better situation for him is a franchise that's been struggling, but a front office that is new and fresh and trying to be creative in how they evaluate
Good point.
players. I don't see that with the Lakers. The Lakers are star driven, going after the big name. Hurley is all about development. I don't need the big names. He's done it with UConn. He hasn't gotten the All Americans. He's gotten a couple here and there, but he's developed these guys to being pro guys and being champions. And so I see Hurley maybe seeing one of those franchises in the NBA that needs a boost and needs some fresh energy. And the Lakers are the Lakers. They're a big name. It's a big city, obviously, but maybe the vision that they offer is not what he believes in.
20 past 12 o'clock hour on the East Coast, a Wednesday edition of Middays with Q. Rich Quinones here. We are coming at you live and exclusively on Sports Radio 1029 FM, the game, Southwest Florida's newest game in town, part of Broad Street South. And you can always check out the YouTube channel where we post this, Broad Street South and Rich Q on Q. Jonathan Marshall, kind enough to join us at John_Marshall3, covers the NBA, also sports anchor, reporter, WMUR. Celtics on the road tonight, Game 3 NBA Finals against the Dallas Mavericks. You and I were texting each other. This has the makings now, whether, first of all, what's the latest on Porzingis, because I can't even pronounce the type of injury that they're reporting. And I know the line's kind of, 1.5, 1, 2. I mean, I think Dallas is done. We'll get into it, but what's the latest on Porzingis?
First of all, I haven't even tried to even say that the injury out loud. In my head, it sounds crazy. So I'm not even going to imagine what it sounds like if I try to say it, right? So he's already dealing with the calf injury, right? This is the opposite leg. So, right. So you want to be cautious. Joe Mazzulla, the Celtics coach, said yesterday it's a serious injury. Porzingis, of course, being a player, he says, look, I want to play. But it's out of his hands. They've taken it out of Porzingis' hands. You got to think long-term, right? You don't want to jeopardize what he can be for you guys for the next few years, right? And so for me, I think it's a situation where he goes through warm-ups and we'll see how it goes. It really could be a game-time situation, right? But they've earned themselves the luxury of being up 2-0 to say, let's see how this game 3 goes. Let's buy you some more time, right? Just sit this one out, a couple more days, see how you feel on Friday, and then we'll take it from there. But if I had to guess right now, it's a game time decision.
Yeah. Listen, he was I know he was my X factor going into the series. I know that when we talked about and we previewed the series, you were talking about Holiday and White being factors, and thus far they have been factors. You don't have to put all the emphasis on Tatum and Brown. But again, listen, I'm not going to write off Dallas just yet. But I'll tell you, man, it's so funny, right? Because the line was 7.5. Boston wins by 7 the other day. Go figure. But Boston is they're such an outside, first and foremost, they try to force that 3-point shot, right? I mean, it's like constant. And you're looking around, you're saying, well, if you're down by 15, maybe you want to do that. But sometimes they're up 6, 8, 10, and they're just chucking. They're not the Golden State Warriors. They're not the Splash Brothers back in the day. I think that gives Dallas a glimmer of hope. If you can get Boston to be a perimeter shooting team and not have Brown or Tatum put the ball on the floor, not have the other element of Porzingis. And, Horford's going to give them a little juice and some energy, and we know about White, but I think that's really their only chance. And then conversely, offensively, look, this is the series you needed Kyrie and Luka to step up. Now, Kyrie's averaging about 21. I think Luka's averaging about 27, 28, but I feel as though they're working so hard for their buckets. I mean, you saw some of the off-balance shots by Kyrie. I don't know how much of the Celtics fan and being back in Boston the first 2 games, you can speak to this, got in this kid's head. I don't know, but you're back home now. You settle down. It's, again, I'm not overstating the obvious here, but this is a must-win game. If they don't win this game, they're getting swept.
Yeah, if they don't win tonight, it's over. It's a wrap, right? For Dallas, for me, and once again, this is what we talked about in the Minnesota and Dallas series. The reason why I didn't like Minnesota, because they had one guy who could actually beat you off the bounce, right?
Yeah.
In Dallas, you have 2 guys. Theoretically, you have Kyrie and Luka. Kyrie has been struggling, right? But even if, and I expect Kyrie to play better at home, I think the Boston crowd, look, that he says the Garden crowd wasn't that loud. Like, that building is shaking. And every time he gets the ball, thousands of people are booing and chanting your name, saying that you suck. Like, it's different, right? And so no matter what you say, it's a different level of being out there on the floor, all eyes on you, all boos are towards you, and trying to focus in on a pressure-packed situation. It's going to impact you no matter who you are. But the problem with Dallas is Luka and Kyrie, as you said, are working so hard to get shots off, and defensively they're getting worn out as well, because Boston has multiple creators, guys, a Holiday, a White, a Tatum, Brown, guys that can attack you, and they will exploit that, right? And so offensively, Luka's already dealing with 3 different injuries, right? He's getting worn out. Kyrie is not a big guy. He's getting worn out. Who's that third guy that Boston has to respect on offense? The guys were hitting big shots throughout these playoffs, P.J. Washington and Derek Jones. They've been missing. The
Yep.
finals is a big stage. They haven't been on the final stage before. We talked about it. It's a different level. The Celtics have many guys who have been there before. Drew Holiday has won a championship. Tatum, Brown, Horford, Derek White. They made the finals a couple years ago. Like, they've been through these moments. So to them, this is nothing. Like, we've been here. We know what we have to do. And the crazy thing about it is Tatum hasn't even played his best game yet.
That's
Jalen
an
Brown
excellent point.
and Jalen Brown really hasn't gone off either,
Right.
right? It's just been a total team effort, multiple guys scoring in double figures. And so I don't think Dallas defensively has an answer for that. But offensively, Derek Jones, PJ Washington, somebody else has to step up tonight. And you would expect the role player to play better at home. We'll see. I still think Boston wins this series.
Yeah, I like Boston tonight. I mean, I just think I look at this game almost as odds wise is even whether Porzingis plays or not. I don't believe the line. I think it'll settle in right at 1.5 or so. One, but I just think Boston's just too deep. And I think what happens is if the three starts going down, you mentioned Tatum has that 14-point first quarter. He's well on his way to 35 and 13. And Dallas is going to be playing catch up. Now it is the NBA. We know it's all about runs. We know no lead is safe, especially when you have Kyrie and Luca. But I also think this is the game where if they're going to get their shots, man, if you're Kyrie, attack, 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 and that's really their path to victory. Other than that, if they lose tonight,
Yeah.
it's a short series. Before I let you get out of here, I want to ask, but I'm like, oh, I'm so over, but I have to ask in closing, this whole Caitlin Clark snub, um, it, it I almost feel bad for the kid because it's like, kind of like you think about it, creepy. Like, man, so many people are obsessed. Look,
Yeah.
I believe if you think you have a stacked roster and there's lack of experience, that's fine. It's like when they were trying to ice out Leitner when he was part of the
Right.
Olympic team, right? And let's remember who did they leave out? Isaiah
Yeah.
Thomas. That
Right.
was a Jordan call. We all know that. It's the worst kept secret in NBA history. And Chuck Daly, by the way, was the coach of that
Right.
squad,
Crazy.
right?
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, have fun during Christmas time, right? But man, I understand the jealousy and I understand both sides of it. But if you are trying to garner eyeballs and you're trying to attract a new audience or build the audience, then you have to put this kid on. And she's a very good player.
No, she is.
You can't have this, well, we're lack of experience. No,
Yeah.
I believe maybe they just didn't want the distraction.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. And there's definitely some it's interesting, Q, because there's definitely some contention when it comes to the attention that she's been getting, right?
100%.
Um, but the conversation has gotten so toxic now that you can't even have a normal conversation about it. No matter which
No,
side, you cannot
no.
have a respectful conversation because it gets taken in different ways that it's just basketball. It should not be taken wherever we're taking it in so many places where
Yeah, but hold on a second. Consider the sources now with the talking heads.
right.
We sit
That's true.
there, I mean, look, I brought up a point the other day, and I know it rubbed people the wrong way. And when it's going to come off as like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, and I'm like, well, I don't want to bring race into it. When
Yeah.
everyone was talking about the chippiness and the fouls and some of the flagrant fouls, and I had Corey Parson on, and I said, Corey, listen to me. You know this as well as I do. And he goes, I know exactly where you're going. It's going to be a black or white issue. I said, all I'm saying is this. And I said, I want to see both sides of it. But
Yeah.
if this is a black player, an African American young rookie in the league, and white players are doing what they're doing, what's happening to Caitlin Clark, it would be an uproar. And I'm not, and I say it, and you can push back if you want. I say it in a respectful fashion where then don't sit there and say we're not bringing race into it when they are bringing race into it. So to your point, it starts off of, well, why is she left off? Why is this happening? Why is the WNBA hating on her? Why are the players doing this? What's with the jealousy? Then it manifests itself into the talking heads with much bigger audiences
Right.
and outlets that turn around and then they bring in the race equation.
It's unfortunate because she's a really good player,
Yeah,
right? And I think people lose sight of that. But the seeds of this were planted at Iowa in college. You could see where this was bubbling into. The conversation even started when she was in Iowa, right? And coming up and competing. Like, the conversation and it turning into a racial conversation, you felt it, right? And so you knew once she got to the league,
There
it
was
was
going to be issues.
turned up. You knew it was, right? And so it's unfortunate because now you have fans or basketball fans who are trying to learn more about the league, the WNBA. They're being turned off. It's turned me off from like even wanting to talk about it, right?
Yeah,
Because it's like, what are we even talking about here? Like, let's keep it to what she's been able to do. Like
right.
she's going through her growing pains, right? She's a great player. She's going to be a great player in the league.
Agree.
Let's keep it at that. Why are we taking it to somewhere where it doesn't even have to
Because
be?
it's easy, low bearing fruit.
It's crazy. In both ways, it's gotten so toxic. It's just a toxic situation. The conversation is toxic. Um, and I do feel for her because she just wants to hoop, right?
That's
And
it.
she has to face these questions and
You know what's going to happen? She's going to start hooping in Europe. I mean, what's to say she can't play in Europe? She
yeah,
would. I mean, think about it.
yeah,
Go overseas. Why deal with this nonsense?
yeah, yeah. Look,
She's
for
got her
her,
own teammates not backing her, like players within the league hating
that
on this girl.
that I don't understand. If you're a teammate, you have to, there has to be a vet. Somebody on that team has to stand up. Like that's natural, right? And across all sports.
Uh,
In baseball, players are leaving the dugout to attack.
You knocked the
In
quarterback
the,
on his ass,
in
blind
the
shot,
NFL,
offensive.
like
Yep.
in the NBA, like we see it. Guys are coming off the bench.
Pettiness in the WNBA, and I'll leave
That's
it at that.
but people want to deny and say it's not pettiness, but it
It
let's just be
is.
honest, there it is.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about? Look, when LeBron got drafted into the NBA, some of his Cavaliers teammates, Darius Miles, I think, Ricky Davis, they weren't speaking glowingly about LeBron. They weren't trying to have
But there's a difference. There's a difference between not speaking glowingly. Remember when Kobe was a rookie in the All-Star game? They were icing him out,
yeah,
right? You know, and everyone was saying, you know, it's funny because we were talking, we started with Jerry West. Everyone was saying they were icing out Wilt in the offense in one of those championship final series. But point is, me not being on board or saying certain things, but if I see you're getting cheap shot
right.
or if you're being
Yeah,
planted on your ass, I'm going to come to your defense,
you
man.
have to.
You know, you're still my teammate, and I have to have your back.
There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that. And so the WNBA in what should have been an exciting year because you have a Cam Brink, you have an Angel Reese, you have some exciting rookies, right, that people are talking about and want to see. But the conversation is where it's at now. So the progression that you wanted has now turned into a toxic conversation.
Yep.
And so where do you go from here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Question.
Yep. All right. It is middays with Q Rich Quinones here. It's teetering on lunchtime out where you are. So you going
Yeah,
with
one
what
hour
are we
behind.
doing? We doing hotel food, room service, little
Well,
barbecue, eating light?
I'm back in Texas, right? You know, I used to live out here. You got to get barbecue. We had some barbecue last night. Had some good stuff. I had some hotel, nice breakfast, but going to try some maybe more barbecue, some Mexican food out here in Texas. You got to do it big. Come on.
Listen, I was a little worried you were going to get thrown out of TD Garden the other night when I saw that spread. I was like, Jonathan strikes me as a cat that has that doggy bag and he's taking some stuff to go.
The garden security, they would not allow that. No, I'm joking. Nah, it was a good spread. We're talking lobster, crab cakes. Like it was good. I
Yeah.
was well fed. I was well fed. We'll see how they do here in Dallas for the media. I will have a review for you. I
All
will.
right. No, we definitely want that. And obviously, I know you'll be you doing live stand-up shots for
Yeah,
WMUR?
I am. I actually 4, 5, 6, and we have a
Nice.
pregame show at 7:30. I have an interview with former Celtic Cedric Maxwell coming up. So
Oh,
busy.
you got an interview with Cornbread.
I do. Getting busy in a half hour. Well,
Now,
yeah,
I'm not I'm sure you already have this lined up. You will get his thoughts on Bill Walton, right?
have to,
Yeah.
have to, have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Maxwell, two-time champion in the 80s with the Celtics and Bill
Yeah.
Walton, finals MVP.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah, he's a legend in Boston. Like, he
Yeah.
still he covers the team. Like, you know, so he's Yeah, he's a big deal. He's a
All
big
right, we
deal.
look forward to that as always. Jonathan, kind enough to join us on Middays with Q. Rich Quinones here. Give him a follow at John_Marshall 3. Does a great job covering the NBA. And again, sports reporter, anchor, WMUR, out in Dallas for game 3 tonight. Dallas has to have it. Boston leads the best of 7 NBA final series, 2-0. Looking to go to 3-0 and then probably complete the sweep come Friday night. Jonathan, always appreciate a couple moments, my friend. Enjoy the game tonight.
All right, Q, appreciate you.